Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a disassembly and first impressions video for you on this guy right here. This is the Spyderco Yojumbo. First off, big first impression, I love this name. Oh my god, they did it. Oh, you mad lads, you pulled it off. I couldn't be happier that they made the big version of the Yojimbo the Yojumbo. Whatever meeting they were doing, I'd like them to know that I was looking down, smiling at them at that very moment. Because, yeah. Otherwise, this, just for full disclosure, this guy got sent to me by Spyderco. I was curious to check one out because the Yojimbo is a knife that in a lot of ways I respected, but it just wasn't necessarily my style. So you know what would make it my style? Going bigger. Now, in practice, I know that a lot of people would be interested in it, and, oh, interesting. And I figured, you know what, I might as well take a look. So what we see here is completely unsurprising. I know that all of you are shocked, but I personally am not. The reason it's unsurprising is that, oh my god, look, Spyderco has used the golden style pivot in a golden Colorado, USA earth knife. Amazing. What a shock. No, this is sort of their same usual golden style bushing pivot with a pair of phosphor bronze washers on there. This is so very, very typical Spyderco that it's, yeah, it's almost, it's not that interesting. What we can see is that this is using the Spyderco compression lock, and actually the compression lock looks a little bit different in that there's more of an angle to the lock face there, because the way that the compression lock works is that this little bit here slides in between the blade tang right here and this pin. So this time it's at maybe more of an angle than usual, so that's fine. It doesn't super matter. The initial action on it wasn't amazing. Seemed to be running a little slow. Pardon me. I'm going to use some knife pivot lube here just to get it sped up a little bit, so to speak. And so there's that. Aside from that, everything seems pretty straightforward here. Put a little lube on the detent ball hole as well. Yeah, so there's that. What else am I going to say about this guy? I mean, honestly, yeah, it kind of is what it is, right? So let's go ahead and drop the pivot back into place. I want to make sure that the pivot is properly oriented. I'm sorry, that the washers are oriented. See here, there's an inner ring, and on this side there isn't. That inner ring corresponds to this part here. So I want to make sure that that's still facing downwards. And so I'll go ahead and do that, rotate the washers a little bit, and then everything should be good to go. We'll go ahead and drop the liner in first. And again, this gives me a nice opportunity to show off the compression lock here. When I disengage it, this part comes out up above the blade, and the blade is able to freely move. And when it engages, it drops down into place between the stop pin and the other part. That's how a compression lock always works. Nothing super unique there. Let's go ahead and put the scale down over this. Super straightforward here. Although that's good, right? I mean, look, this is a construction that has worked well for a long damn while. Right? This is how the Paramilitary 2 is made, the Para 3, at least not the lightweight version, of course, but the regular Para 3. I think it's how the original Yojimbo was made. It's how the Shaman, I mean, look, it's pretty, look, there's a reason vanilla is a good flavor, right? This construction works. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close the pivot, or close the knife here. The reason for that is that A, holy crap, is that a big blade, and B, so I don't need it rolling around all over the place, and B, I want to make sure that I am, got everything sort of in position properly. One downside, I don't know if it's a downside, but one fact about this kind of pivot construction is, though, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my thumbnail in this cloth to kind of clean out a little of the thread locker that was on there. But the one sort of downside of the whole thing is that the this screw here, both of these screws on both sides have the potential to come loose. And so if this side comes loose, tightening the other one won't necessarily help. So you might, on occasion, have to tighten both screws independently. Okay, I have massively over-tightened this pivot, so let's not do that. Let's go ahead and loosen this up. Okay. There is a little play, so I need to tighten this back up. The other reason that this probably wasn't running so well is because it's, oh wow, centering's way off now. Is there something underneath the washers? is always the question you ask in these cases. There might be. But okay, let's get this to a point where there's no play. No, there's play. Before I do that, before I check that, what I want to do is make sure that, okay, no play. Centering is a little bit off. Before I go any further, what I want to do is actually check the backside here. And by the way, T10 for the pivot and T8 for the rest of this guy. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen all the other screws here. Just thinking that maybe, because I tightened them all down before the blade was in position, maybe I've locked some, improper tension into the system here. So I'll go ahead and I'll tighten this up again. And because the other possibility is that I've mistakenly, or, well, not mistakenly, but I have put a, gotten a little bit of something trapped in there, which is putting, basically, it's no longer riding properly on the washers. One of the washers might be off to the side there. And that seems very plausible right now. So, unfortunately, what that means is that I'm going to want to go back in here. But luckily, it's a very simple construction, so I can do that. And T8, pop this loose. Was sort of hoping this one was going to be quick and easy. I'm hungry, but whatever. Still not so bad. That falls loose, and move that over here. And then move that over here. One other little tip is you're doing a disassembly, and I've said this many times before, but I know people's first video is oftentimes not the one I would want it to be. That's all popping loose and locking loose. But one other tip is to put your screws, take your screws off, and keep them in the order they came off the knife. So pivot, and then 1, 2, 3 from front to back. It can be helpful. Okay, so let's go ahead and check in here and see what's going on. Could there be something underneath there? Could the pivot be off? Maybe that's my next step here is, or is there something in the pivot itself? Okay, I'm seeing a little piece of lint or something like that that was there. That could be causing some of my problems. So I'll wipe that off, and then I'll go ahead and reapply the blade. And there's also a little piece of something on this washer, so I'll clean that off as well. It's possible that what happened is I just have a little piece of particulate trapped between the washer and the blade, and as a result, the everything got sort of out of whack. I've had this happen, actually, a couple of times lately. This is the moment where you talk about, oh, well, if I was smart, I'd be, using fancy dust extracting HVAC systems in my office at home. Yeah, that's not a thing. But anyways, let's pop this out and put this back into place. Okay. There we go, there we go. And pop this loose. All right. I have got this all messed up here. The one downside to this current construction is that there is no shoulders on these, no shoulders on those back pieces there. So as a result, it doesn't fall into place straightforwardly. Oh, no, that was the wrong ordering. See, that's... okay, pivot is on there right now, so let's put this here, and this here. I've already applied the thread locker, so that should still be in place and good, but I'll go ahead and I'll tighten down one of these guys, just to get sort of everything locked into place roughly, and then we'll do this up here, and now this should give me the opportunity to put the pivot into position. And hopefully we will be in a better place. The centering is still a little weird, but it's also over-tightened at the moment. The other possibility is that the other side of the pivot has come loose, and I'll need to adjust that as well. So let's try loosening that. I should have made sure that the centering was on track before we got started, but okay, that side is now loose. Actually, here. I've got both of the sides of the pivot here loose. When that happens, where are we at? And now I'll go ahead and I'll loosen this, and loosen this a little bit. And now tighten that down, and I'll tighten the other side just in case. Tighten in the middle. So this should give us a reasonably secure and stress-free sort of blade. Now, let's see what we can do about this centering. I really should have checked the centering ahead of time. That's a shame, because I may be just fixing what was there from the factory. The other thing to remember is that it feels much more severe than it is. The centering is just not really that off, but it feels that way because the blade is very close to the edge of the knife there. Is there evidence of repeated striking? There actually is, so maybe it just came that way. But okay, let's at the very least... Okay, there's no blade play at the moment. Actually, it's reasonably smooth, but I think I can loosen that up a little bit. And if I wanted to shift it to this side, I would tighten over here first. Oh, that's fully tight. Yeah, so then we do this. And we are over-tightened. No play. One other thing I might try is loosening this screw here, the stop pin screw. Because that shouldn't... Okay, now I'm going to loosen this a little bit. Wait. Yeah, the pivot is... Normally the pivot would be... If the pivot is too loose, the centering is going to go in this direction because the lock is actually pressing the... Is that true here? It is... Probably not, because the pivot, the liner is actually pressing almost directly above the pivot. So the side of the pivot actually won't have, looseness of the pivot won't have a massive roll on things, or in things. Okay, so let's tighten this down a little bit. Okay, next thing I'm going to try and do here is take I'm going to just take this little cleaning cloth here. I'm going to fold it up, and I'm going to trap it between this here. The reason I'm doing that is precisely to kind of force the blade off to one side a little bit. So the blade is now touching the other side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen these guys up and then retighten them with that little bit of torque in the system. Tighten, tighten, and tighten. And just in case, I want to make sure these are good to go on this side. Okay, now when I take this out, whoops, sorry about that. We were about where we were. Okay, so now let's go ahead and loosen the back side here, just a scotch. Where is my action? Action is very smooth, but also a little loose. So let's tighten just a little bit here. Action is very smooth. A little hint of play. Okay. Tighten a little further. I'm wondering whether this was just, oh, it's maybe a little hair better. And then on this side, loosen just a scotch. No play. But we are rubbing just a bit, but there's a little bit of sign of rubbing on the blade won't show it, but on the G10 there. So it looks like maybe that's where we've been all along. Interesting. What else could cause that? Could it actually be the liners itself? Could the liner be a little bit off to the... Because, okay, let me sight this guy down the middle. Or maybe the tip itself is... I am absolutely splitting hairs here, but that's definitely... It's not quite on center. It's made much worse by the tight fit here. This blade has relatively little distal taper up until the very front of it there. And so, I mean, the action on this is now really good. There's no play at all. So, I mean, functionally speaking, the knife is fine. Right now, there's just some OCD part of me that wants the centering to be better than maybe it ever was. And, yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, I should have looked at that more carefully. Whoops. I'll check the video and see. Well, actually, I suppose you all will, and let me know whether it was there. But for the moment, who knows, I may play around with this a little bit more at a future date. But nonetheless, I'll go ahead and give you some first impressions of the knife, and that is that, holy crap, this guy is big. I mean, what do you expect from something with jumbo literally in the name? But nonetheless, it's definitely kind of a beefy knife. But the thing is, whoopsies. It's even so big that my relatively small index fingers are, having a little trouble getting the full clearance there. But what it basically is it's an extension of the Yojumbo, or the Yojimbo, that is, which is a Janich design. Michael Janich is he's a pretty well-known weapons instructor. I don't know, martial artist. He's something in that vein. Basically, he's a person who teaches people how to defend themselves with pocket knives. And he created the Yojimbo originally, and created the Yojumbo for somebody who's either wanting a bit more reach or, frankly, just has really bigger hands. And this absolutely still works. In my relatively small hands, it's borderline comical. But at the same time, the design still works. And in terms of ergonomics, it's actually, in this grip, it's quite good still. And so it remains an interesting piece for everyday carry. But, yeah, so that's the Yojumbo there. I will take a look at the footage there. Maybe I'll see if there's anything else I can do about that centering, but, it's not so bad. I think it just looks that way mostly because of the, is that fixed? It may more or less be fixed there. Actually, that made a little bit of a difference. But anyways, so there you go. That is how this is working. It is much smoother now, running a lot nicer. And that's my first impressions of it. And hope this has been interesting to you. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.